right, last day of Be About It. We're talking about creating space. And so the objective here is that we want to learn how to take a step back from being involved in a relationship if we have a specific vibrational contract that we're, the way we're setting boundaries or the type of boundaries aren't being respected, or it's just very draining, right? It gets to a point, at what time do you dismiss it from your life, or you allow it and you stop holding space for it? And so in order to arrive at that point, you yourself has to create space to be objective about it.
Yeah. We have a hard time seeing how how much energy anything is taking from us when we are in it. I use the example of, if I run a marathon today and I run a marathon tomorrow, I don't know which one was easier or harder because I didn't get to recover. So I don't feel any progress or benefit from recovering and letting my body heal. And so I'll probably feel super tired tomorrow if I did that. And so the same is true when we're out here getting, in relationships, interactions with people, because those all cause some external stimulation causes a reaction in us. We get positive hormones from connecting with people, and it makes us feel good. Well, our bodies tend to get kind of, I don't want to say addicted, but we get used to those. And if we don't get out of them and give ourselves space in other areas, we will either become dependent on those to make us feel good, or we can actually get, according to some psychologists, basically addicted to feeling bad. And it's problematic, and a lot of you might know what that feels like. And I do, because I've been addicted to external substances, so it's very difficult, and the only thing that got me out of it was literally being forced off of it.
Yeah, and so we take these pauses regularly in order to become more objective. We take these pauses, and so another example is like working in your business versus working on your business.
Right.
And so when I'm working in my business, I'm absorbed and I'm living in my business, and everything in my business is me and I'm that, and I take things personal because I'm pushing and putting so much of my energy into it. And then when I can take a step back and just work on my business, what I'm doing is I'm creating a separation of me and the actual entity itself, and I'm able to be a little bit more objective, and I get to kind of come in and evaluate it and objectively judge it,
Right.
or create better ways to measure it, and then come back, and then I get to see what works and what doesn't, and then come back to myself. And the important part of that is that it's separate, and so I don't have to take things personal when it's happening to my business. And that's the exact same thing with a relationship or a vibrational contract. When we have this regular vibrational contract and we're unable to step out of it and just be objective with it, it makes it impossible to decide. I mean, you just heard or watched that video about the study of not being able to judge ourselves.
Right. We can't accurately judge our ability or knowledge in any given thing, because if we don't know anything, we really don't know what there is not to know, and therefore can't tell that we're not good at it. And if we do know a bunch, we tend to think that everybody else knows the same stuff, and so we undervalue what we do know. And so there's only a couple ways to really evaluate and improve this effect. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and that is to, one, learn more, because the more you learn, generally the more you know what there is that you can learn more of. And then it also helps you to see what you have learned. You find people who know the same things, and then you can step out of it and observe objectively, and maybe measure what it is you've done.
Yeah, and real fast, if we're trying to create or establish new boundaries, we need to be able to see what's working, what's not, for us, for our energy states, for our self-esteem, and we also need to be able to see where we're going with it. So if it's not doing for us what we want it to do, it's an opportunity to reevaluate, maybe the meaning you attach to the boundary, or the strategy, how you delivered the boundary.
Right.
And if there's any areas that you're not maintaining the boundary in, right? Like, I said for my mom, I said don't call me after 9 p.m. because that's our quality time together, and I just turn my phone off. And so I know it bothers you when you always call and I miss your calls, but if you keep calling at a time that I'm telling you not to call, then that's your responsibility. However, if one of the nights I'm available and I forget to turn my phone off, Kyle's not here, and I answer it, that's going to reaffirm the behavior of her calling at that time.
Right.
And so it only takes a little, one move to go back on the boundary. There's lots of experiences that create this momentum and the strength of the actual vibrational contract.
Yeah.
And so it takes that much determination and perseverance to establish that boundary. And so we have to measure, is it working for us, and is it working for the external relationship, and if it's not, that's okay. There's, like I said, other strategies, or it's an opportunity to decide, is this really worth it? And how do you decide that? Like, is it really worth it? So what it comes down to, for example, this relationship with my mom, I bring up that relationship because it's a great way to see an intimate relationship, societal beliefs that we have it, and then family structure beliefs that don't necessarily align with who we want to be or who we are. And so it's difficult for me to look at her and say, okay, why am I letting her treat me in a disrespectful way repeatedly? Well, I know that I'm putting her needs and wants before mine, and so it must be a self-esteem thing, self-love thing. So then I reevaluate, okay, well, if I love myself more, I end up in this position where, it's either her or me. I have to pick or choose between her or I. Now, the problem with that is because our society and people train us to think that we have to be giving and think about other people before us, which is why when you get on the airplane, they say, they remind you, everybody has to be reminded, please put your oxygen mask on first before you help anybody else.
Right.
I mean, that's a very clear evidence that our belief structure within, how we take care of ourselves and other people are, it's unbalanced, right? And so that's just a safety thing. And so what Kyle and I were just discussing is I was letting him know it's too difficult for me to have to choose, even though intellectually it makes sense. My emotions, I can't really arrive there. And so what we discovered is every boundary that we set links to our priorities and our values, right? It needs to align. The people, the events, whatever we're being associated with and experiencing, need to align with our ultimate goal and purpose of what we're doing here. And that values come right behind that, and then our priorities make that up. Now, if my mom has different values or priorities than I, which is completely understandable, that's not a big deal. But if her behavior treats me in a way that doesn't align with my values or my self-esteem, then what I get the opportunity to do is distinguish that my values and priorities and communication styles are very different than hers. And so what I'm going to do is I'm not necessarily going to choose between us, but I'm just going to shift my energy into a new direction that is in alignment with my values, goals, priorities, and self-esteem, right? This end result of who I want to be. And just making that shift, that energetic shift, will eventually, as I move forward more and more with every action in my life that aligns with this person and who I want to be, because we've talked about all that, right? Mm-hmm. It will push me further and further away from this old vibrational contract and relationship without me actually doing anything, right? And so that creates space. And when you create space in that type of relationship, it not only makes it much more manageable and tolerable to interact with her over, a longer amount of time in between, but it feels very genuine and healthy to make that change without compromising any of these old limiting beliefs that I haven't yet overcome, right? And that's okay, because we can recognize that.
Yeah, I think that's good.
That's good. Okay. All right, guys. Well, yeah, this is the end. We'll have one more video, just wrapping everything up.
Yeah.